Okay, so to make seitan the washed flour method, I'm going to start off with a dough ball, and I'm going to do it in 2 batches, 6 cups per batch. So now I'm going to mix water in there to form the dough ball. I'm going to start off with 2.5 cups of water. If it feels too dry, you can keep adding a little bit more water, maybe a tablespoon at a time. Or if it's too wet, you might want to add a little bit of flour. So now I'm going to empty it out onto the clean counter, and I'm going to use my hand and knead the dough. It should only take a few minutes, and you want to get a dough ball that it's evenly wet and smooth. If it's too sticky like this, you can get a bit of extra flour and just sprinkle it on to help it. Okay, so at this point you can stop. It's evenly mixed up, and the gluten is starting to activate a little bit because it's now wet. So I'm going to put that in to a bowl. I'm going to put it into a bowl to rest with water. So I put a bit of water in there to start with so that the dough doesn't stick to the bottom of it. So put that there. So I'm just going to cover it completely with, this is just cold water. Actually, it's all covered. So I'm going to let that rest for about half an hour, but you can let it rest for more than half an hour if you get stuck doing something, but at least let it rest for half an hour. And now I'm going to go ahead and do another lot of that, because this recipe is a 12 cup of flour recipe, but it's just too much to manage in one go, so I'm going to split it up into 2 parts. So I'll do that now. Okay, so I've just finished repeating that dough ball process. This is the second lot, so this is another 6 cups of flour, and I've done exactly what I did previously with the other ball into this here. And at this point I like to keep the 2 separate portions, because later when I go to wash it, it's a good size to wash individually. If you put those 2 together, it's just too big to manage in one go. So that one is now resting. So now I've got the 2. So I'm going to leave them and come back to them maybe in half an hour, and we'll continue then. Okay, so now we're back. It's been about half an hour, maybe a little bit more. I'm going to start the flour washing process. So I'm just going to empty this with the water. Yeah. I'm just going to use cold water to do my washes. So what I'll do is I'll fill up this metal bowl. And I'm just going to use my hands. And I'm just going to massage this ball of dough. And you'll see that the water is cloudy at the moment, but soon it will get quite white when the starch washes out of it. So I'm just massaging. You can see that as the more I wash it and the more starch comes off it, the strands, the gluten strands are starting to develop already, or they're getting activated. Okay, so I can see that the water at this point is starting to get really, really, really opaque. It's almost looks like it's saturated with the starch. So I'm going to remove the dough, the ball, and then I'm going to just put it in the colander next to this on the other side. I'm going to tip this water out. I'm just going to repeat that process again until the water becomes just slightly cloudy and the gluten is nice and stringy. So yeah, I'll come back to the last wash and show you how it should look like once all the starch has been washed out of it. Okay, so now I'm just preparing my fourth water change, and the gluten is actually looking very uniform. I can hardly see any white starch left in there, but I'm still going to do one final rinse to finish off this washing process. So yeah, it's looking pretty good. I can probably stop at this point, but the last water change was still quite cloudy, so I'm going to do one more just to make sure. Okay, so as you can see, this water is just slightly cloudy. It is pretty good. That means that I could stop washing now, and that's what we're trying to achieve with this washing process, is that we just want the gluten left. But I'm pretty happy with that. That's exactly the texture that you want. Yeah, so there you have it. So that's the washing done. I still have another one here to do, so I'll go ahead and do that, and then once I've done that, I'm going to combine the two together, and then we can work as one ball rather than two separate balls. Okay, so I'm just going to put this now aside in a colander to let the excess water drip out of there. And so yeah, I'm going to wash my other one now. Okay, so I'm just at the end of my washing process for the second ball of dough, and this is the last rinse. And so this is once again how it should look, just like that. Yep, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to combine it with the other ball, and I'm just going to let it sit there for maybe an hour to rest and to let the excess water drip out of there, and then we're going to go on to the next step. Okay, so the washed dough has been sitting there and resting for about an hour, And as you can see, that's the excess water that has dripped out of there while it was resting. So I'll just get rid of that. There's that there. And now what we do is we're going to prepare the seasonings that we're going to cut that gluten with. This is in here a mix of chickpea flour, 1/3 cup of chickpea flour, 1 tablespoon of tapioca, 1 teaspoon of onion powder and 1 teaspoon of garlic powder, and I just mix all of that up in one bowl. And then with the wet ingredients, I've got in this bowl 4 cubes of the chicken flavoured stock cubes, and this is the brand that I've been using, and I find that to be quite good. If you can't get a hold of this one, you can just put 4 tablespoons of any stock powder that you would like to use instead. So I've got 4 cubes of that chicken stock powder cube in here, with 1 tablespoon of water, 2 tablespoons of peanut butter, 1 tablespoon of olive oil, 2 tablespoons of soybean paste, or if you'd like to use miso paste, you can. And also there is 1 teaspoon of sugar in there also. What I've done is I've put it in the microwave for about a minute, and then it warms it up and everything melts down, and then it's easier to stir through. So right now it's still warm, like that. Okay, so that's that. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that gluten and I'm going to cut that into maybe 5 portions. Maybe 4 will do actually. So depending on how big your food processor is, if it's quite a small one, then you might want to do smaller batches, but if you've got a bigger one, then you can do more in one go. So for what I'm going to do to incorporate the flavors into the seitan is I'm going to cut these into small pieces like so. I'm just going to divide this into approximately 4 equal parts, because we've got 4 lots that we're doing. And so for every batch that I do, I'm going to put sort of like a little bit of each in so that it's all evenly distributed. So I'm going to do that now. So I'll just put that amount in there, and maybe about a quarter of this in there. And then I'm just going to process that. I've got the chopping blade on in the food processor. So I'll just do one lot to show you, and then I'll turn off the camera because it's actually quite noisy, and then I'll come back to it. A texture like that, which is good, and then I'm going to scrape that out, and then I'm going to do the same for the rest of them. And I put it all together, and that's what it looks like right now. Bowl. So I want to do two loaves out of this batch, so I'm just gonna cut it in half. So at this point in time, it's all sort of fallen apart because it's just been processed, but we're gonna try and put it all back together again and create a really nice textured, like a chicken sort of meat texture. So I'm going to massage it into shape. It's best to get the this to be elongated while it's still soft like this, because once it all comes back together, like when you leave it to rest, it actually does all come back together and it starts to toughen up, and it's really hard to shape then. So while it's still like manglated, I tend to then do this, Now I'm going to try and start to compress it back to a tight mass of gluten. I'm going to do the same for the other side. You can see all the different strands or striations that the food processor has made, and it's going in all different directions. And that's going to give you the final shredding effect once it's cooked. So it's all looking good. Okay, so at this point in time, I won't go any further because it does the gluten needs to now sit for about maybe 20 minutes just so that it can just sort of relax back into its sort of like a solid mass, and then we're going to shape it and then we're going to steam it. So I'm just going to leave it there for a bit and then we'll come back to it in about 20 minutes. Okay, so the dough's been resting about 20 minutes. I've gone and stretched and knotted one already, and that's how we prepare it for steaming. I'm going to go ahead and do the other one so you can see how I achieved that. So right now the dough is actually still quite mushy. I'm going to fold it over and squish it out. I'm going to do it another time. And now I can feel that the gluten's come back together and it's become quite resisting to shaping now. And now I'm just going to roll this like that. Trick. And now I'm going to knot it. So, oh, I should just pull it with a bit of tension, but not too much that you're going to tear the gluten. So that's one knot, two, maybe 3 or 4 knots. So I prepared some grease paper here and some foil. Now I'm going to go ahead and wrap them up, ready for steaming. And then one layer of the foil just to reinforce it. Okay, so now it's actually ready for steaming. I've got my pressure cooker here, which I have got this thing that you put at the bottom to steam with, and try and put the folded part of the foil on the bottom just so that the weight of the gluten will hold it down, just in case it expands and it might want to unravel. So I do it like that, and then I'll put the lid on. So I'm going to set it onto the steaming function, and we're going to steam for 2 hours in 1 hour increments, because this only has a maximum of 1 hour per cooking session. So okay, so this is the first hour. Once this first hour goes off, I'm going to come and add on another hour to cook. So I'll come back to this once the 2 hours is up. Okay, so once the seitan has been in the pressure cooker for 2 hours, I took it out and then I put it on the kitchen counter, and it was resting overnight, and now it's ready to be shredded. So I'm going to open these up. Okay, so here's the first one. Feels nice and solid. So here you can see all the striations in the different directions because we knotted it. And it does actually take quite a bit of force to pull it apart. Okay, so another way you could use this type of seitan would be to slice it up as like a lunch meat. So I would probably, if I was making it for the intention of using it as a cold cut meat, for instance, I would probably season this a lot more, like really go nuts on putting more salty, spicy type flavors in there, because this shredded chicken here, this here is actually a very, very neutral tasting seitan, and you do need to season it a lot more once you get going with your meal prep. But that's the whole point of it. The whole point of it is to have it very neutral, so then it's more versatile, and then you could do a lot more with it. But I'll show you how this one looks when it's sliced up. So when you slice it up, it actually has a completely different texture. It's very, very much like a, I don't know, like a chicken breast or like a turkey breast that has been steamed or maybe smoked. So that's that. There you have it.